Let's take it from the top. This is your story.
So there are a couple of things about this biopic. First and foremost, I'm going to do an analysis of the biopic, and I think it's a little bit different than most others have been doing. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good, breakdowns, especially from Black creators. This is more than a movie; it's a musical. It's a testimony from members of his family who were a part of the orbit that made him the person that he was, being, and of course that being his brothers, the members of the Jackson Five. And this movie had the Jackson Five's blessing, without question. I mean, I understand there was some differences of opinion within the family, but that's always the case, and that's to be expected. With that being said, let's get right to it. So here's what they got missing, right? I wanna talk first and foremost about his parents, right? And I want to contextualize his parents, their upbringing, and then what eventually became the formation of the Jackson Five, from which Michael emerges. So, Joe Jackson was born in Fountain Hill, Arkansas in 1928. He migrates to Chicago, Illinois as a child with his family. Katherine Jackson was born in Barber County, Alabama in 1930. And like Joe Jackson's family, she, along with her family, migrated to Indiana as a child, as part of the Midwestern industrial revolution that was pulling Black Americans out of the South as part of the Great Migration to the industrial Midwest. Now, Joe Jackson would eventually meet Katherine, and she would become his wife, and they would eventually settle in Gary, Indiana. To me, that's an important part to talk about and to contextualize who Michael Jackson is and the impetus that drove what he became. Now, Mike is born, he's the 8th of 10 children, right? He's number 8. And he's born in 1958 in a relatively small industrial Rust Belt city, Gary, Indiana, a manufacturing powerhouse within the scope of the Midwest. So a lot of manufacturing jobs, a lot of industrial jobs. And his father, Joe Jackson, works in the steel mills in Gary, Indiana. 10 years later, 1968, so much is happening. You have the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. You have the debacle that is the Vietnam War. You have the debacle that became the Democratic National Convention. You have student protests going on across the globe. I mean, one in particular that I write about in this book, Critical Ethnic Studies and the Global Pursuit of Justice, I talk about a lot of what was happening specifically in Northern California, which spread across the country and then eventually across the globe. And another thing that happens is the Jackson Five hits the scene. Now, the Jackson Five hits the scene. I tell my kids all the time, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. He had them ready. So not knowing what was going to come or when it was going to come and how it was going to come, but if and when it does come, you're ready. So their moment happened to come as their father took them on tour and brought them, before live audience, and one thing led to another, and they were eventually discovered, right? So I won't give away the movie, but this is how they were discovered. They were discovered because once Michael Jackson and the Jackson Five hit the stage, I mean, they were in step, they were in sync, they were singing. Michael's voice was like nothing. Like still, even to this day, like to listen to young Michael Jackson, it's hard to understand how this young kid at 10 years old has the soul, has the capacity to sing this way. As a 10-year-old kid, it's still all these years later. I wasn't born when he was 10, right? But as an adult, I listened to him as a 10-year-old and I can't believe it. And the people at that time, the artists and the producers and whatnot, they couldn't believe it either. It was something extraordinary. It was phenomenal. He was a phenomenon, and it was easy to see. So you have all of these things happening in 1968 when this 10-year-old kid with his brothers, the Jackson 5, who made up the Jackson 5, hit the scene. They hit the scene, and Mike is a spark plug immediately. And boom, they take off and they never look back. So they move, the family relocates from Gary, Indiana to Los Angeles, California. This is where we see the legend that became Michael Jackson sort of, come to life. He becomes bigger than life in his time in California. So he's 21 when Off the Wall comes out, and he's 24 3 years later when Thriller comes out. All right? Now, this becomes the greatest selling album of all time till the very day. From 1984, and before 1984, nothing has sold as much before it up until now. The greatest selling album of all time. Now, Joe Jackson is taking a lot of heat, but it's something very important that we need to contextualize when we talk about and think about the black men from that era specifically. Joe Jackson comes of age, he's born at the peak of the Jim Crow era, in the brutal Jim Crow South. And despite that, this man still had the dignity. I don't care what we think about him, because he's been catching flack, right? Every black family that I know that has a black man from that generation, Joe Jackson was not an anomaly. We're trying to contextualize him in the modern, sphere of, whatever we would like to call, manhood or whatever. We're deconstructing or decontextualizing him from the reality of the time that he came up in. And all the black men in that time, I would argue, were more like him than whatever else you would like to paint of black men from that era. They were about discipline. They were about understanding that if you want to make something out of your life or of yourself, you have to be respectful, number one. You have to be strong, you have to be dignified, and you have to be disciplined. And if you want to do something in this world, you got to be twice as good and you got to work twice as hard. And every black person, either they forgot or they bought into these modern notions of something that didn't apply back then. And so these were the things, these were the tools and the principles that Joe Jackson was instilling in his children in the midst of a lynching epidemic happening toward black men who were trying to be too damn uppity and navigating that. He saw something in his children and he did not allow for them to let up because he understood the state. He understood what was at stake. Whether we agree with that is not the point. Everyone is entitled to raise their children, or to have children and to raise them as they see fit. The bottom line is that man raised, him and his wife, they raised 10 children who are, I mean, they're not on drugs, under the global spotlight all of their lives. And by and large, model citizens. We have the benefit of hindsight to be able to look and say, what could have been done differently or what could have been done better. And that's going to be with anybody. That's going to be with everybody. When you look back on any person, any historical figure, we can always do that. And whoever thinks that they have all of the answers today I guarantee you in 30 or 50 years, there are going to be people who are going to be able to look back on what you did or what you thought was right, and they're going to be able to make corrections or critique whatever it is you did that you think that you're so right about today. We need to be mindful of all of that. No one is perfect, but Joe Jackson was a visionary, and no matter how you feel about him, it's just amazing how black men are framed as if, the black people are not products of black men and black women. Like, as if we are products of a black man and a black woman historically. And it's amazing how society has been able to villainize the black man as if the black man is not the victim of state-sponsored violence, number one. It's public enemy number one when it comes to the repression of the black family, right? He's public enemy number one. And all you need to do is just look at the ways in which society frames black men and the ways in which people, black children and black women, in some cases, unfortunately, start to parakeet those tropes about black men. I digress. So Michael Jackson, in my estimation, was put into a situation intentionally by his family, his parents, a nurturing environment that allowed him to dream and saw those dreams come true at a very young age. So by the time that 10-year-old kid becomes 20, when he sees something in his mind, he's been nurtured in a way to where whatever it is he's thinking is not a fantasy. He knows because he has a 10-year track record by the time he's 20. He knows that anything that he can see, he's been taught and nurtured to think that everything is possible because his father and his mother and his family and his brothers put him in an environment, worked their asses off enough so that they were actually able to do things that only the mind could conceive, and they saw it come to fruition. So there's a level of power here when we understand the entire context, when we don't decontextualize this man, Michael Jackson, and the family from which he emerged from, and the parents and their background. See, here's the thing. Mike understood that he came from royalty. He believed that in his heart. You know who validated it? Everywhere on the globe, anywhere he showed up. People who couldn't even speak English, his presence, what he's saying from his soul had an effect on people that we haven't seen. We haven't seen this. We haven't seen anything like this. And this kind of power is coming from the Black American legacy. A legacy, a family, a group that the United States has framed and amplified to the rest of the world that we weren't of much significance. Some of us bought into it, but a lot of us didn't. What Michael did was he showed the world that we weren't just merely slaves. We were made into slaves. We were forced into slavery. We weren't slaves. We were something else. We are something else. We know it. Mike is an example. Mike became an example of what happens when you have the ability to put black babies in an incubator and allow them to grow and nurture and be nurtured and not be doubted and not put in hostile environments as a youngster to question whatever comes to their mind, but to tell them, put them in an environment so that whatever comes to mind, you can actually see it. You can actually make it come true. How is this man, this man who is the son of former people that we deemed 3/5 human, that we deemed, being the United States of America by law, that we deemed to be less than human, to live in servitude, whose ancestors were to live and serve white people in perpetuity? How is it that these people produced this child who ended up becoming by far, the most popular American in American history? We go back from 1776 till right now. Who's more popular than Michael Jackson? Anywhere in the globe. Anywhere on the globe. Who, from 1776, and 1776 is strategic. That's the founding of America. In the last 250 or so years, who is more popular globally than Michael Jackson from any country, anywhere in the world? Now, I'm going to argue that no one can name someone that's as popular or more popular than Michael Jackson. Now, keep his legacy intact. Keep the fact that Joe Jackson was his father. It don't matter what you think about it. Keep intact that his mother, Katherine Jackson, was the nurturing, loving mother that she was. But Joe Jackson was the disciplinarian and who instilled hard work into him. He doesn't become Michael Jackson without those two elements, without the love and the nurturing demeanor of his mother, and without the discipline and the hardcore understanding of what it's going to take for you as a black boy to grow up in this country and become a black man. You're going to have to work twice as hard and be twice as good. And he already had all the gifts. And his father still didn't let up on him. He didn't let him ride it out, even though he knew he had the goods. He had the goods. And his father was like, nope, keep going. I know you got the goods, but keep going. This movie is a testimony to so many things. It showcases to the world that whatever you thought about Michael Jackson is not to be decontextualized. He is from us. This is our brother. Michael Jackson is our brother. As a black American, he is our brother. This is our brother. We share him with the rest of the world. But please understand and believe he belongs to us. He belongs to us. He is our brother. No matter how much they love him across the world, we appreciate that. And so it's important. It's important as family members to protect our family. So this is why I'm saying what I'm saying what a whole bunch of other creators are saying. I'm just saying it a little bit differently. A lot of us didn't care about, the bad ratings that this movie got. Like we didn't care about that. Nobody cared. Like what? When we listen to white folks about black culture now, we still doing that? I'm not doing that. A lot of us aren't doing that anymore. We don't care what they think. We don't care. They've showed their hands. They've showed their hands so many times. The list is too long to even try to do justice by naming some things, because I'll leave the most important thing off. No matter how, I could spend 30 minutes just rambling off examples and I would miss the most important thing. So it's not even worth trying. Michael Jackson proved to the world something very important, that black people weren't slaves. They were enslaved. They were made slaves. That black people stood and were people of principle and a people with integrity and a people with a sense of royalty. The boy from Gary, Indiana, the The boy bought the Beatles catalog. He beat these folks at their game. He understood their game, and by the time they realized what he was doing, he was running circles around these folks, using his leverage, using his star power, using his bad power to buy up certain things. And he had these different visions and these goals. And he talked about that, what became the Marvel Universe and the Marvel movies, right? He had this idea long before that, wanted to do this long before that. They had to figure out a way to scandalize his name. That's why so many black folks ain't buy it. We never bought. Many of us, some folks did, but a lot of us, we didn't buy it. We know. See, we know. This is one thing about black folks. We know. There's always somebody amongst us in our families who's a little bit different than everybody else. They kind of dance to the beat of their own drum. They they're a little more quirky than everybody else. But black folks, we understand. We embrace them. There's always a black sheep in our families, in our midst. And so because we understand that, you know what I'm saying? Like, we embrace Mike. Mike is different. He was different. His family knew he was different. But they still treated him with the dignity and the respect that he deserved, because they knew he was different. And then by the time he showed it to the whole world that he was different, people got in line. What this movie did was it didn't allow for all of the noise to enter into this space. This is a version of who we knew our brother to be as members of the Jackson 5. We're giving you this version. And when you put him on the scale, the version of the people who knew him most, who really created the opportunity and created the space for him to grow. It helped him grow. They are just as much a part of what he became as anyone. His big brothers are telling you what they thought of him. They were the closest to him. They were the ones who were doing, you know what I'm saying, the routines and practicing and dealing with their father and dealing with the traveling and dealing with the industry and they were the ones. This is their voice. We heard all the other noise. We've been hearing it for decades. When he was dead, before he died, throughout the trials, after the trials, here's another alternative version. That one sits well with most of us. It sits well with me. I can't speak for everybody, but it's a beautiful thing to see that it sat well with a lot of other people, being that it is the highest selling biopic in history. That's it for now, y'all. Peace.
Word up, quick to set it, don't wet it. Real niggas lick shots, peace, Connecticut.
Yo, what up, yo? Time is running out. It's the real though. Let's connect politics, We can change places, get lifted.